Hello, this video will be about why the cross is important. Well, so why is the cross important? The cross is important is because it's where Jesus purchased our salvation on the cross 2,000 years ago. That's why it's important. We are sinners, and so God sent his son to die on the cross for our sins. We broke God's law. We deserve to die and be on that cross, but we can't pay our own debt. We're in debt. We're in sin, but we can't pay it ourselves. Only someone who is sinless. No one is sinless except God alone. So God sent his son, God incarnate, God the Son incarnate in flesh, and died on the cross for our sins. And this is something that not many churches preach about. That Paul Washer preaches about this. Paul Washer is a good preacher. I recommend him. That on the cross, the wrath of God crushed his son. And as the famous song goes, the Father turned his face away. And so Jesus bore our sins on the cross, and he took the punishment from God. God's wrath poured out on him. And so that is why it's important to remember the cross and remember what Jesus did on the cross. But also 3 days later, he rose from the dead. So, and 2,000 years later, the cross is important. What Jesus did on the cross is important. As I said, it's where he purchased our salvation on the cross. And that is very essential to Christianity. If Jesus didn't die on the cross, and if he didn't rise from the dead, as Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 14, then we are most to be pitied if Jesus didn't rise from the dead. But it's also important that he died on the cross. For those who say there's many paths to God, they all worship the one God, all religions worship the one God, there's many paths to God. Well, that false teaching is refuted because Jesus died on the cross. If Jesus died on the cross for no reason, then that's a big, big insult to God. So if someone says there's many paths to God, to say that, that's a big insult to God. God wouldn't send his son to die on the cross for no reason. He did it to save humanity. If there was many paths to God, then God wouldn't have sent his son, you might say. It's a false teaching to say there's many paths to God. Jesus said in John chapter 14, verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father except through me. So it's very important. The cross is very important. His death is very important. And of course, his resurrection is important. Also, his deity is important. Jesus is God in the flesh. So that's why it's important, the cross. Thanks for watching.